the United Kingdom, serving his regiment, becoming the Gurkha Major, winning the Military Cross, as well as becoming a member of the Victorian Order. And so when I think of these young recruits, it makes me very humble, because this year we'll take 323, but I could take 10 times that more. That is the quality of young men that are coming into the Brigade of Gurkhas. So, Gordon, you have provided a historical record which will be invaluable for our historians, for the Gurkha Museum, but most importantly for people to be able to enjoy and read over the years to come. And I hope there might be more volumes later. It's clearly been a labour of love, and that comes through. And I would say, Gordon, you get to the soul of the Gurkha soldier through this book, which is again why I think it's unique. So finally, a very, very special thank you to Gordon, and also the remarkable Pokhara, Kathmandu and Doran warriors who have made these events happen. It's an extraordinary journey for the book, for pretty much self-funding, getting it published, and we are here now through your hard efforts, and particularly for the Kathmandu branch of the Gurkha warriors, Major Bhuwan Singh Limbu, Chandras Prasad Limbu, Captain Tanka Bahadur Limbu, and Captain Sir Bahadur Pun. And there are many, many others. And also, I'd like to finally say it's particularly special to have Ram Bahadur VC for Siramati Pariyata, and that, for us that is really special. Finally, as I said right at the start, Tapainaru Justakoi China and Jai Gurkha.
किन्नु भएको होइन हजुरहरूले यो किताब त एउटा लेगेसी बोकेको एउटा धरोहर हो हाम्रो गोर्खासको सो यो किताब किन्ने होइन यो किताब त हजुरहरूले ओन गर्नु पर्यो
all the way from Jumray to Pokhara to Lake Fewer. This 20-day trek, as you can see here, what a diverse landscape, what a diverse people. Day by day, the wide river valley gradually narrowed into a steep gorge. This was a landscape without roads, not a vehicle in sight, and not a drone to be heard. None of the homesteads had tin roofs, and there was a lot more ice and snow on the surrounding peaks. As we approached Manang, the homesteads were mainly people of Tibetan descent. At this stage, I was carrying a huge wad of low-denomination notes to pay for the 20 days of food and a place by the fire. There was a relative sprint each morning. Getting up early was absolutely essential to get to the tea houses at your destination, to secure a place by the fire. And you had to make sure you weren't too close to the fire, where it was overly hot and you'd get burnt, or too far from the fire, where you'd get cold, very cold. In the evening, and I remember this so clearly, as the ladies were cooking the meals for the trekkers who were going through, the smoke built up from the ceiling coming downwards. And I wondered how that small hole in the roof would actually work. Well, it didn't, because the smoke came further and further and further down. And by the end of the evening, we were having to lie on the ground to ease the pain and discomfort in our eyes. This, therefore, means that when I came to write your stories and you told me all about your mothers cooking in your homesteads, that how by the end of the evening their eyes were smarting and watering, I could relate to that. So, Tanka Saab, you mentioned it very clearly. This is one of the things that has gone in the book. For 11 days, we only had dal bhat for lunch and dinner, with champa for breakfast. Champa is a real delight. But it was Darbout power that boosted us over the Thorongla Pass at 5,400 metres. After crossing the pass at dawn, we descended quickly into the Mustang Plain. Chandra Saab, Tankar Saab, Lalit Saabs have all commented on this scenery in their stories. What a transformation. The Johnson Trail, the ancient trading route connecting the towns of Tibet with the villages and hillside markets in Nepal. Small hamlets with more solid tea houses, thriving communities. Those thriving communities have dissipated over the years. Colourful yet smelly mule and yak trains, the ringing bells warning of their advance. Get off the path was the siren call that came from them. There was no prejudice, there was no malice, and it was simple. If you didn't get off that path, you would be charged off that path. They weren't stopping. That mule train was coming through, and maybe there would be 20 or 30 of those mules driving through. At this stage, the Johnson Trail had no roads, and it was mule power and yak power that determined the trade. Dalbar was still the staple diet, supplemented with boiled cabbages. But there was an amazing choice of desserts, either apple or pumpkin pie, which was a true feast. As we travelled down the trail, I shared stories and listened to veteran Gurkhas. Soldiers, veterans who had fought in Burma during the Second World War, others who had had skirmishes in Malaya and Borneo. On reflection, many of them were fathers and some grandfathers of the current generation of veteran Gurkhas. On the final day, we slowly descended down a narrow trail through the fields and paddy fields to Lake Fewer, where a cluster of single-storey guest houses hugged the shoreline. I clearly remember cycling along a dusty track into the small, quiet town of Pokhara. That small Pokhara has long since disappeared. We have a technical malfunction, but hopefully that's going to be resolved, of a group of soldiers from 10th Gurkhas. Ahadu Limbu. He had been transferred unceremoniously to the education wing after an unfortunate encounter between the one-tonner vehicle that he was driving and a tree on the Lok Marchau road. You can see the tree there, leading up to Lok Marchau police station. There was a lot of damage to the vehicle, but the tree was unmoved. Just over 40 years ago, we were invited by Sergeant Harry to the Sergeant's Mess, where we were treated to a traditional Gurkha curry and numerous glasses of San Miguel beer. My reaction to the fiery chilies caused much amusement to the Gurkha NCOs, but so began a friendship that has endured over the years. All students passed the pilot programme, much to the delight of the CO, Colonel Newton Dunn. Harry's career was now back on track, and as he made steady promotion through the ranks, invitations to the Sergeant's Mess in the new territories were replaced by invitations to the Officers' Mess at Church Crookham. My eldest son, Tom, is here, 4 years old. Tom, put your hand up there. So he's joined. Actually, stand up so people can see you. So from this young boy at Church Crookham, and he spent many a weekend having Sunday lunches there in the Officers' Mess. So his journey has been aligned to that of the Gurkhas as well. Here in a barrack room in Church Crookham on a warm Sunday afternoon in 1995, I had the privilege of enjoying the company of Harry Saab and 5 of the surviving Gurkha VCs from the Burma War. It was an unforgettable experience as each of them related their story of winning the Victoria Cross. After Harry's retirement, we maintained contact and the years rolled by. Meanwhile, with a passion in local history in my hometown of Richmond-on-Thames, I wrote and created 2 books, both self-published. I use the word created because there's a lot more work than just simply writing the words. That's actually the easy bit. People of the Latchmere you see on the right served as the template for warriors. And in that I had stories about the East Surrey Regiment, I had stories about Sopwith, Hawker, because their manufacturing plant was nearby in Kingston upon Thames, and that was a wonderful story for the people who created the Sopwith Camel, the Hawker Hurricane, and the Hawker Hunter and the Harrier Jump Jet. That was very, very well received, using the same means of interviewing local people and recording their stories. So, in 2019, following a trek with my eldest son, Tom, who's grown a bit by then, he's looking more similar to what he is now, to Annapurna Base Camp, I spent several days with Harry exploring Dharan and Danda Bajar. An idea was floated. Pen was put to paper to start recording the story of Harry's family, beginning with his father, Budi Bahadur Limbu, who had served in Burma, fighting the Japanese during the Second World War. And that was in the regiment, the 4th 10th Gurkhas. So that's him there. You can actually see there, that's the first notebook. That was us sitting down in a coffee shop in Dharan, starting to write. A story has to start somewhere. This is exactly where it started, with 2 very well-decorated cups of coffee. At this stage, though, I had no clear idea as to the direction of the project. I was listening to Harry relate, and I was building and assembling a growing number of stories. Now it was a matter of shaping them. 2 years later, released from the restrictions of COVID, I returned to Nepal. I spent several days trekking with Harry in the eastern hills in view of Kanchenjunga and the sacred Limbu mountain, Kumbhakarna, so distinctive with the head and shoulders of Kumbhakarna. We visited the homesteads, villages and the schools of his childhood. Many years earlier, he had escorted his bride back to his father's home. This was the Lokundai trek. We walked the same route, with Harry pointing out the small hamlets and homesteads that he knew so well. In this way, I could immerse myself in the story while bringing it alive. In Kathmandu, I then met Harry's elder brother, Captain Tanka, also a veteran of 10th Gurkhas. And now here's a secret. Did you know that Tanka Saab, who's over there, put your hand up, Tanka. Tanka Saab didn't intend to join the army. He was far too educated for that. The only reason he went for selection was to keep his younger brother Harry company. The problem was, within a week, Tanka had been selected and Harry Saab hadn't. So Tanka Saab there spent a very sleepless night sweating over the fact of what was going to happen if he had to ship out to Hong Kong and poor Harry was sent back to the village. Fortunately for him, Harry passed the following day, and together they headed to Hong Kong, and they were placed in the same section and actually had 8 adjacent beds in the training school there. So that's his secret that we've actually taken out now. Because they didn't want to be sent off to become clerks. They wanted to go into their father's regiment.
Okay.
Can you imagine the reaction from the NCOs in the training school when they discovered that they had been deceived? But again, you'll have to read the book to get through their stories. And he became an expert in jungle navigation. His biggest trial was a survival course in the jungle of Brunei, where he had to endure 18 days foraging for food. That's quite an interesting story. But Tanka, though a master of the jungle, was not that adept in water. In fact, he was rubbish. Off the coast of Cyprus, he had nearly died after he fell out of his kayak into the water and his buoyancy aid hadn't been properly fitted and came up around his head. This generation of warriors, very few of them actually saw combat, but the service that they saw in the hills and communities of Nepal